We are live. Jake Ellenbogen joining me is my partner over on Kick, Gary Sheffield Jr. How you doing, man?
I'm good, other than the fact that all my sports teams are bad. We're not good. And like obviously being a Yankees fan, and I guess this is like essentially the time where Buster Olney gets all of his clicks by putting us in the rumors. So yeah, I mean, I'm excited about Ohtani. So we'll see what happens.
Absolutely, and we'll definitely get to that. Guys, be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. We'll be answering your questions, or at least trying to answer your questions. Don't bombard us or anything like that. But yeah, before we get into it, you can follow Gary Sheffield Jr. at Gary Sheffield Jr. on Twitter, and you can follow him on Kick at Gary Sheffield Jr., where we are right now. We're also on YouTube. If you were wondering if you saw that Outlast clip, he was in that. So we've been having a blast just streaming just about every night, not even the same games, just hanging out on Discord, getting to know the community and build a community. But there's more than that when it comes to us. And you are a sports analyst and I'm a sports analyst. So we're going to talk nitty gritty. We're going to talk about all sorts of stuff and really just have a fun conversation. But we have to start off with Shohei Ohtani because, I mean, people will disagree that don't really respect baseball on the level they should, and that's fine. But Shohei Ohtani is the best player in any sport right now. He's the most dominant, at least. And so when you look at the fact you're talking about a top 3 pitcher and the best hitter in baseball, it's like, wait, so he does 2 things. He does them extremely well. He's still in his prime, if you will. But right now, you kind of prefaced it a little bit with Buster Olney. There is a thought out there that the Yankees, the big bad Yankees, who have not won in almost 15 years, a World Series that is, could be interested in him. Now, Dodgers are obviously a contender. The Mets have been thrown out there. You have the Braves that you mentioned would be a good option. I don't know if the Braves will do that, but if they did, oh my. And, you have the Angels, and then you have some teams on the West Coast just because, the whole West Coast rumor. You have the Giants that are interesting. You have the Padres, and you have even Seattle, I've heard. So I don't really buy into all that. I really feel like it's Dodgers versus Yankees here. But where are you on all this? Because we've kind of been texting back and forth, but we're sharing to the audience. I mean, what are your thoughts on all this?
I guess the big thing is that everyone feels like Artie Moreno just will not trade this guy, in large part because of his ego, which, I mean, Angels fans, of course, have more experience on this topic than we do because they have to live with it. But at the same time, to your point, right before we actually went on air, you brought up a great point that Brian Cashman should be pretty motivated to get this done, whether it be Juan Soto or Shohei Ohtani. He's not getting anything done right now in terms of winning, which Hal Steinbrenner earlier this year, if I'm sure you remember, he went on live television and said, I don't understand why everyone's upset. We're winning baseball games, and I feel like the postseason is a crapshoot. Well, the New York Yankees are no longer winning baseball games. They're in 4th place. That's unacceptable, obviously. So now you can't use winning regular season games as a consolation. We're not doing that either. We're not winning World Series championships, obviously. And if you're not going to be a part of the postseason, there is nothing to root for. So in terms of what Brian Cashman's going to be bringing to the table, he needs to be putting better players on the field. Whether he's spending money or he's cashing in his prospects, doesn't matter who you want him to trade. He's got to find a way to put the right combination together and put talent on the field. Right now, you've got Josh Donaldson, who's essentially a 38-year-old middle-aged man he's playing at third base. Okay. You had IKF all over the field. We don't know where he's going to play. Center field, left field, just running down balls. He didn't know what was going on out there, right? Obviously not a great option for a team that wants to be a contender. Aaron Hicks was on the field, who eventually we ended up getting rid of on his $70 million deal. Okay. So we're sitting there looking at this roster and thinking, there's no possible way, when there's no prospects on the field currently that really the Yankees have developed, that Brian Cashman should believe that he should hang on to any prospect long term. he should be looking at ways to cash in the guys that he has and finding proven talent. And a lot of people just don't believe Ohtani could be traded. You're actually an optimist, which you've actually talked about. You think that Ohtani potentially could be traded. And I kind of agree with you because if you really think about it, Ohtani can only really resign with like one, maximum like four teams. Is he even thinking about signing with what? Mariners, Yankees, Dodgers, and maybe Mets if they go like 100 million over?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like if that's the case, you're the field of who actually can put together a trade, you're not going to have to blow them away. You just have to give them great prospects. And I feel like all of those teams have great prospects. It's just a matter of who wants to take the risk. And maybe Brian Cashman losing games is enough motivation to take that risk.
Yeah. I absolutely agree. And I just think that, there comes a point you can say, oh, well, Cashman wouldn't do that. Cashman wouldn't do that. But there comes a point where, when your job is on the line and, there's a lot of, when it comes to general managing, there is ego involved. I just had Kyle Sloter, who's playing the NFL and he's playing the USFL and XFL. I had him on yesterday and he actually made a really great point is when you look at, say, like football, he's like, do you know why Bill Belichick, why those first round picks are busts that he drafts and why it doesn't matter that they're busts and why he continued to win? It's because while he is the general manager, he puts the best guys on the field because he is the GM and the GM is ahead of the manager. The GM is ahead of the head coach. And so Brian Cashman, we always hear like, oh, well, Brian Cashman's limited to what Hal will do. And, I'm not saying that's not true, but Brian Cashman's ahead of Aaron Boone right now. So he's very important the rest of the year to right this ship. And going out and getting, Sean Casey, we both like that move. We talked about it on Kick. It was a good move, I think, but you can't just leave it at that. You can't just be like, Dylan Lawson was the reason we were so bad. We've talked about it. When you really think about it, this team just is not that great. You said it on MLB Network yourself. When your team is riding on one player and when that player goes down, you are not the same team. I'm sorry. Like, you're not a good baseball team. And I know it sounds weird to say just adding Ohtani would change that. But if you actually know who Shohei Ohtani is, he's two players in one. So you're getting a top three pitcher and you're putting him next to the guy who just started the American League All-Star game in Garrett Cole, and you're putting him next to the best hitter after Ohtani and Aaron Judge. So you have the two best combinations that you could possibly have in the major leagues. Maybe the argument would be Acuna long-term over Judge, but you see my point. So like, look, I've said this. I'm a prospect hugger. Okay. I love the prospects. I've always been about that, but this is different. This isn't getting Juan Soto, despite the fact he's 23, 24 years old. Soto's not hitting 300, 32 home runs, and up there for Cy Young Award winner. And that's what really separates this from being a every season trade. We get a guy like this and just a once in a generation opportunity.
Yeah, and I mean, we also have to look at the construction of the Yankees right now. And Anthony Rizzo is actually not having as good of a year as many of us thought he would. He got off to a pretty good start, and he really hit a rough patch. But the Yankees need that devastating left-handed bat. It's the reason why Juan Soto is considered also a fit with the Yankees, is that they need that at Yankee Stadium. You're talking about Shohei Ohtani. You're talking about the hitter who's going to be planted right behind Aaron Judge, offered as protection. So when Aaron Judge does return this season, of course, if that happens, you're talking about the most devastating 1-2 punch in Major League Baseball. So now that you have that, you also have to look at what he's doing on the other side of the field. You're talking about the New York Yankees, who are, you can say that Nestor Cortez is struggling this year, hasn't pitched well. You can say that Luis Severino is a player that the New York Yankees, not only the Yankees, the fan base, but the staff has to believe that he's probably on his way out the door in New York. And if that is going to transpire, they have to fill somebody in those shoes. What you saw last year with Monty, when they went up and got Montes, they essentially said, we no longer need this asset. We're bringing in somebody new. Well, obviously, when you're bringing in Shohei Ohtani, it's a much more reliable asset. You can assume he's going to be the two behind Garrett Cole. Sometimes he's going to be our ace. And that is a fantastic thing. So right now, the Yankees need a multitude of things. They need a reliable arm in the rotation, and they need a left-handed bat. You can get it in one player. And in my estimation, if the Yankees are going to trade a ton of prospects, right, to go get Shohei Ohtani, what better motivation do the Yankees need other than the fact that you just traded in all your prospects to re-sign and be the highest bidder this offseason? In my opinion, there's no possible way that you're going to trade a Jason Dominguez or any other prospect that is highly touted in this organization and then let the Dodgers or Mets outbid us.
No.
I think Hal Steinbrenner, if that happened, if Brian Cashman made this move, I believe that Hal Steinbrenner would say there's no possible way I'll let anyone outman me.
Yeah. And if Shohei decides to go where there's less money, then okay, but you're not going to get outbid. And I agree with that.
No.
I think at that point, you have to know how massive this move would be. New York obviously has had the likes of Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig, Joe DiMaggio, etc. I mean, the list just goes on, right? Going out and getting a superstar in Reggie Jackson. I mean, like, they've done this stuff before, but not on this level. And so when I look at this is not Soto last year, but this is what we were talking about off air. I think this is realistic, Gary. This is not a pipe dream. We didn't just bring it up just because we didn't have anything to talk about. Because trust me, if you guys have tuned into our kick streams, we don't run out of things to talk about. But,
no,
you know, what it comes down to with this, Gary, and the reason why we're talking about this, the reason why I'm optimistic is because, one, I don't think only just threw that out there. I think there's some stuff there. Jeter just dropped the Shohei Ohtani stuff like right after the All-Star game in front of everybody. So I think that was honestly to get a little bit like get Cashman in that, like kick him into gear. But also probably because, you know, he still talks to the organization. I'm sure he heard some things. And maybe it's like, hey, you know, Jeter, you mind like just throw in a little thing in there? You know, I mean, you're going to be, you know, I wouldn't be surprised. But here's the thing and why it's possible. He's 29. Okay, so he's not young. He's not old, but he's not young. He's not 24-year-old Juan Soto. That's going to command a hefty price, and he doesn't have any control. So when you don't have control and he's 29 years old, now that price is going to go down a little bit. So when people talk about this being an astronomical, you know, price, I don't agree. I think the Yankees can get him without giving up Volpe. Maybe they give up Torres. We talked about that. Maybe they would give up like a Severino, like maybe somebody like that where they throw in a pitcher as well. And then their prospects, you're probably looking at Wells, even though I'd like to keep him since they don't have any catchers. That's going to be a problem down the road.
I love Wells back there, man.
Yeah, I like Wells, but I would trade Wells for Ohtani. You know what I wouldn't trade, though?
Who?
I'd hold off. Like, I have guys that just like my favorites, right? I wouldn't trade Spencer Jones.
Oh, yeah, I love Spencer. You know I've been talking about him, right?
You have.
Yeah, Spencer Jones is going to be the real deal.
I want him in the draft. So the last time I got really invested in the draft, I fell in love with this guy. I thought he looked really similar to Giancarlo Stanton. His name was Aaron Judge. So I didn't. I don't really get into the draft, but when I get in the MLB draft, I just like love a player. They end up panning out for the most part. So I don't know. Like I watched Spencer Jones and I'm like, man, wouldn't it be cool if they could get him doing the pitcher as well? Because he was a two-way player. He's not going to be because of the injury. But no, Spencer Jones is somebody I would kind of keep off limits just because I don't think they need him to get that trade done. I think, you know, the cool thing here is I've been seeing some trade ideas out there where, you know, okay, say they get rid of Peraza, right? Well, they get rid of Peraza, but they don't get rid of Jason Dominguez, right? Because now it's like, okay, so you got rid of Peraza, but you keep Dominguez. Or if you get rid of Dominguez, you keep Peraza. Or if you get rid of them both, you do have guys that can kind of be like the backup plans in the farm system. You have Pereira, who I do like, and you have the shortstop, whose name is totally escaping me, number 5 on the list, Trey Sweeney. So there are guys.
I forgot about that guy.
Like that's what I mean. Yeah. Like I don't think people realize the Yankees don't have this loaded farm system like people are thinking. But Jason Dominguez, Austin Wells, Spencer Jones is their top 3 now because Peraza's not on the list anymore. But Peraza's still a prospect. Don't tell me he's not. And so when you look at that, and then the way, you know, Drew Thorpe is starting to turn it up, in single A. They could ship him off. Will Warren. I mean, hey, you know, where there's smoke, there's fire. Roderick Arias, the 11th prospect. I've seen there are teams that like him more than the Yankees do. So he could be in there. So I feel like there's enough here to facilitate a trade. And if you're worried about the money, Gary, tell the audience what you told me about the money.
I mean, people always say that, okay, we're going to have to buy more chicken buckets, right? Oh, they're going to charge us more for beer, more for chicken buckets. And to be quite honest with you, I think this Ohtani deal, first off, we should never care about the owner spending money. That's one.
Yeah, no.
But, I mean, it's ridiculous. But at the same time, I do think this Ohtani trade is not, hey, when's Hal going to invest? This is the best investment that the Yankees could ever get on their hands. Aaron Judge, when you see Aaron Judge and we signed him to a $360 million deal, everyone looked at that and said, Hal paid up big. But what you have to remember is when you go to the team shop and you walk around Yankee Stadium, all you see is big number 99. It's all you see. And they cash in every time. Hal Steinbrenner cashes in every time. So you might be looking at the chicken buckets, you might be looking at all that stuff, but every penny that they throw on the field comes right back to them. Shohei Ohtani, this is the rare instance where if the Yankees, and they maybe can't acquire him, maybe it's not possible, who knows, right? Maybe they won't do it, but it's a rare opportunity where the best financial decision for the Yankees is also the correct decision on the field. And that is why, to your point, maybe the Yankees can get this done. And the last thing I'll say is I do think when Michael Kay earlier this year, after Aaron Judge was signed, said, I think the Yankees are working on something big. This was it. I think Shohei Ohtani was the guy that Brian Cashman was trying to knock on the door. And I think Artie Moreno probably shut it in his face. That's what I think happened. So I think now that it's starting to materialize another year down the road of the Angels not competing, and now Ohtani is being outspoken about wanting to win. He wasn't doing that before.
Yeah.
Now he's doing it. I think now the door is starting to crack. Maybe it doesn't bust open, but I do think Brian should be calling.
Oh, no, absolutely. And I don't think that they can afford. See, this isn't a situation, Gary, where they miss out on Ohtani and they go out and get Soto, in my opinion. I would not do that. I think Ohtani, I'm all for Ohtani because of who he is. I don't think they go out and get anybody because at that point, you know, the whole point of getting Ohtani is you're getting two players in one, and he can help you win, but he can help you win long term as well because he's still only 29. Like, he's older, but he's not like old. If you go out and you get Soto, while that is long term, it just that at that point that would seem like a bit of like a reach because eventually Soto is going to become available. You know what I mean?
Right.
And Ohtani, the point you're like, because, you know, obviously somebody who doesn't follow would be like, well, why would they trade for Ohtani if he's going to be a free agent? Because I'll be honest with you, this is the only chance he resigns. Is it they trade for him, they butter him up, they get him to like the, you know, the area and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And they, you know, because once you're in that locker room, once you see the pinstripes, you see the history and all of that. And he said, like, or at least, you know, the reports have come out that he really enjoys New York and he really likes Yankee Stadium. But I mean, it's just different. Getting him in that not everybody is going to be a Manny Machado where like he goes to the Dodgers and he's like, all right, I'm out, you know? And I feel like Ohtani's somebody that doesn't want to have 3 teams on his resume. I don't think he ever wanted to leave the Angels. I just don't think he has a choice.
Yeah, he's making the decision essentially that Mike Trout was unwilling to make. Different personalities, of course, but also Ohtani's been dealing with a different market his whole life. Mike Trout has been very comfortable. He was comfortable in Jersey, gets to Anaheim. They're the off-brand LA team. They're right next to Disneyland. They're really not the main attraction. Mike Trout was very comfortable, and there's nothing wrong with that. But Shohei Ohtani is now making the decision. I want to become a winner. I want to be a winner. And the Angels cannot facilitate that. For whatever reason that there is, whether you want to blame Artie, GM, it doesn't matter who you want to blame. They can't get it done. So if Shohei Ohtani is looking at this, if Ohtani becomes a free agent, he'll be a Dodger or a Mariner. Those are the 2 teams he's going to go to. He'll probably land on the West Coast. But the Yankees or the Mets would have to outbid so strong that you would essentially have to overwhelm his representation. It's not likely that Ohtani, who's already the highest paid player in the game due to his off-field endorsements, is going to be blown away by any offer that Hal Steinbrenner or Steve Cohen offers. It's not going to matter. So you're going to have to bring Ohtani into New York and make him say no to the pinstripes. If he does it, so be it. But the chances are, if he makes it into October baseball and he gets that taste, he'll know. I mean, you watch Raul Ibanez hitting 2 bombs against the Baltimore Orioles. One of my favorite moments as a Yankees fan. If Ohtani was doing that, the coverage would be like no other. This is like putting Barry Bonds in pinstripes if he could pitch. And we have that opportunity. Can he leave? Yes. Is it a risk? Probably. But we have to take this risk. At some point, you have to calculate when you take risks. And I can't think of another situation, another asset in any sport where I'd rather take a risk on than Shohei Ohtani. Really.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, to your point, and you brought up a great point there with the October feeling, you know, this is where anyone who gets him is in the driver's seat because, I mean, hell, he could go to, you know, he could go to the Orioles. No one's talking about them. He goes to the Orioles. They go to the postseason. They start winning. And I don't even think they have to win the World Series at that point. This is the first time he's tasted what winning feels like, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, so it kind of changes that, you know, maybe you have a little bit of a bias towards wherever you go in that regard. And I think with the Yankees, we're talking about a world-class organization, or at least should be a world-class organization. Just the history there. I mean, we've already had, you know, guys from overseas like Matsui have his big moments. I mean, big moments in the postseason. You know, I think, you know, just like Tanaka, for instance. I mean, this isn't like unheard of, you know, and I honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they went out and got an Ohtani. They traded, you know, some prospects, and then they went out and they posted for, I forget his name, Matsukami or whatever his name is. Matsutaka.
Oh, yes.
That's what I think would be their next move, because I think they would just go all out at that point.
I can't. It essentially, if they, let's just say they did go out and our phones buzz and we hear blockbuster trade, Shohei Ohtani has been traded to the New York Yankees. This is Brian, not just Hal Steinbrenner. This is Brian Cashman putting 2 feet in the sand. We are going for it. There is no long-term play. The play is now. And so if the play is now this season, that is what being a New York Yankee is. It doesn't matter about 3 or 4 years from now, because 3 or 4 years from now, we'll be worried about the now and we'll take care of it. If we have to spend extra, we will. Everybody assumed Steve Cohen, who's already spent like $350 million, that when Shohei Ohtani, if you asked people 6 months ago, hey, where's Ohtani going? They say he's going to the Mets. Everybody said that. And we didn't consider how much they were spending or how maybe difficult that would be to sustain long term. Nobody cared because we assumed that Steve Cohen would worry about the today. And if the Yankees went out and pulled the trigger for Shohei Ohtani, I would have no doubt in my mind that I can trust this staff to always put 2 feet in the sand for the now, which eventually will turn into a World Series title, which is all I can ask for as a fan.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because I think we also get a little too caught up in the whole, well, they're going to regret this forever, because I don't think it's possible for a big market team to regret trading prospects forever. I mean, the Dodgers won World Series and they traded away Alvarez. You know what I mean? They're not sitting there like, man, you know, I'm so mad. Like, it's kind of like a little bit of a joke now. It's like, oh, you traded Alvarez. But they're not like sitting there like, oh, no, whatever shall we do? Like, no, they went out, they signed Freddie Freeman, they traded for Mookie Betts. I mean, like, that's the thing, is that like big market teams, it's almost like, you know, they're playing on easy mode and everyone else has it on hard mode to build a franchise. And so when you're talking about the Nationals, though, you have to hit on those prospects. So it's like all those prospects they got for Soto, like, you better have hit on them. Like, you better know which ones that you got. You better have, your scouts better have done the right stuff there, you know, because if guys like that don't pan out, you know, I think it's CJ Abrams was one of them.
Yeah.
If guys like that don't pan out, you know, it's not going to be good. You know, Mackenzie Gore as well. I mean, that's the thing, is that they're not this big, you know, giant franchise who Like, the Yankees will never be a team that only wins like 50 games because they can just go out and spend what they don't have. You know what I mean?
Very
like,
true.
That's the thing. So, like, if Ohtani can't put them in a 10-year graveyard because the way baseball is and how big their market is, they can get out of that in a year. That's the thing.
Dude, it's almost, money is the ultimate Band-Aid in this sport. With unlimited, you can spend, if we wanted to spend 400 million next year, we could.
Yeah.
We just don't. It's essentially up to Hal Steinbrenner if that's the type of business model he wants. Whether he wants to pay 60 cents on the dollar in taxes, if he wants to do that, he can. I'm not going to push him to do it. He can choose to do it. He doesn't have to consult anybody. He can just make it happen. So if the Yankees put themselves and they shoot themselves in the foot, maybe Ohtani's out a year. He needs Tommy John 2 or 3 years down the road. Obviously, you're missing a key cog in the offense and in the rotation. The New York Yankees are one of maybe 3 or 4 organizations in the world that can say, we can sustain a quality organization without him. And if that's possible, why not put all your eggs in one basket and say, we're going to take this risk. We'll send them the prospects. Let them have to hit on those prospects. Because you know what? Prospects are risks too. If you don't trade them, they have to pan out.
Yeah.
All of us were sitting there looking at it and saying, oh, Jesus Montero, he's going to be the next Jorge Posada, maybe even better. We could have cashed him in for Felix Hernandez, and we said no. And we didn't do that because, and everyone was sitting there saying, oh, we didn't take the risk by trading Felix, by trading Jesus Montero. And I'm sitting there looking at it, I'm going, you didn't?
Yeah.
Because to me, you took a risk by saying no.
Yeah, because
it's all a
then
risk.
it ended up becoming like, went from Felix to now it's Michael Pineda who has arm issues.
Right.
And you're like, well, you know, this could be good, but doesn't feel like we won that trade, you know? No, I agree with you on that. And I think, you know, just baseball in general, I mean, there's no salary cap, you know, where you have a lot of money, say, in the NFL, you know, it doesn't matter as much because the salary cap. Like, you can't do things like this. You know what I mean? You wouldn't be able to go out and get a Patrick Mahomes in the middle of the season, even if you wanted to. And so I think that's the beauty of baseball, that, you know, teams, like, even though you know that you're not going to win a World Series the way you are right now, that deadline is so active, you can always find a way at the deadline. And teams that stand pat at the deadline typically don't do well. Like, it's typically teams that make like that one move, not a ton of moves, but it's just like that one move. Like, say what you will, Chicago got absolutely fleeced getting Aroldis Chapman. They gave up Gleyber Torres, and then Aroldis Chapman goes to the Yankees. But do you think they regret that? No, because guess what? They have Nico Horner. They have, you know, some of the guys that they have, you know, I'm totally blanking on the other guy's name, Wisdom. And
how about the dude across the way? They were playing Cleveland, and they had to go trade for Andrew Miller.
Yeah.
They traded for Andrew Miller. I went to those games when they were playing Toronto. Andrew Miller was picked up, and they pitched him into the ground. They pitched him every chance they had an opportunity. And everyone was like, what happened to Andrew Miller? It's because Cleveland went out and got aggressive and was like, we're going to acquire this guy. Yeah. They went out and made a move, and it, to be quite honest with you, Cleveland was in the World Series. It paid off.
Exactly. And the Cubs won the World Series. So do you think they're like, oh, man, it's too bad we don't have Gleyber? I don't even think they think about Gleyber anymore. I think
anyone who does is a fool.
Yeah, all they're thinking about is Anthony Rizzo because he's likable. That's all I ever hear, is that they still root for Anthony Rizzo because he's likable. They do not talk about Gleyber because how did you, like, you didn't get a chance to really even know Gleyber. He never got called up to, you know, the majors. So that's an interesting one, you know, with Gleyber Torres, because, I mean, they could pay him, but it's like, what? I mean, I just feel like there's going to be a team out there that's sitting with extra cash. He's hitting home runs. You know, he's, you know, infielder for the New York Yankees. I could see him getting overpaid. I personally feel like we know what he is. And that year he had where he hit like 30 home runs or whatever, I don't think that's him anymore. Like, I think that was a good year, but I think he's fallen off. I think he's a good player, or at least a solid player. I don't think he's great, though.
And was that the year of the juice baseball? 2017?
I believe so. Oh no, it would be
Yeah,
2019.
2019. Because I felt like those years coincided with the juice baseball. Not to say that Gleyber Torres is made by the juice baseball, but I felt like the whole, okay, like, and the biggest Cody Bellinger supporter that there is on this planet. Like when I saw Cody Bellinger hitting 45 bombs and 42 bombs, I'm like, Gleyber Torres hitting like 12 homers against Baltimore in one season. I was like, okay, these guys have pop, no doubt about it. Like Cody's nickname is Cody Pop when he came up into the big leagues. But I know these guys are not like 40 rows deep type of pop. So I was looking at it like, okay, I feel like maybe these numbers were a little discombobulated because of the juice baseball, and maybe Gleyber Torres really isn't that 35 homer guy we're hoping for. I think his skill set is more of a 18 to 23, 24 homers. Like 25 homers is like maximum for him. And yeah, but yeah, like to your point, if somebody wants to overpay Gleyber Torres, that's not a game-changing loss for the New York Yankees. You can go find that type of production at the plate. Maybe you go find a guy who can play defense at second base, and you replace that offense with Cody Bellinger the following year out in left field, or even center field if you don't want to re-sign Harrison Bader. So I think there's all types of ways for the Yankees to rebound off losing Gleyber Torres, provided of course they go get Shohei Ohtani. But there's a lot of moves for the Yankees to be made, and it's obviously high-paying job for a reason. So there's a lot to be done.
Yeah, like with the whole Gleyber Torres thing, I mean, he is leading the league in errors. And if anything, it creates, like, say they move on from Dominguez, right? They keep Peraza, they keep Volpe. I mean, now you have an infield with those two. Mm-hmm. Figure out who's your third baseman. Maybe you've gone all in to the point where you go out and you get Arenado. I don't know. But you figure out who's your third baseman and you roll with that. I mean, I guess Donaldson or LeMahieu defensively, but the bat, I don't think LeMahieu has it anymore. We've talked about that. I think he's done because of the injury. And I think Donaldson is, I mean, I'll show him the door, like myself. Like, I'm sure you would as well. So it's funny because they're kind of log jammed in the infield right now. And despite the fact they don't have a ton of talent on this team, we've talked about, they're just not very good. They are log jammed. I mean, personally, I think I'd play IKF at third. I mean, he won a Gold Glove at third. So I don't like, and that right there is what I don't get about the New York Yankees and Brian Cashman. You go out and you get a Gold Glove third baseman. You're like, you know what? Move him to shortstop.
Yeah, it's just like them trying to be smart. You don't have to be that smart. Obviously, if you have a hole at third base, at which, I mean, essentially you guys manufactured yourself into having a hole at third base when you traded Gio Urshela.
Yeah.
And went and acquired this guy. Well, if you're going to get rid of Gio Urshela and you're going to bring this guy in, obviously if Josh Donaldson's going to be struggling, IKF should have been the next man up at third base.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's plain and simple. Won a Gold Glove, to your point, should be at third base. But obviously, DJ LeMahieu, they didn't feel like DJ LeMahieu's bat was quality enough, essentially, to play over Gleyber Torres at second base every day. So you start seeing DJ moving all over the field, essentially taking turns, not hitting at different positions. So now it's like, okay, well, now my third base is an automatic out. DJ's going to DH today. He's an automatic out. The New York Yankees, if they're going to go get an Ohtani, I think they need to go young at third base, and they need to, like I said, put 2 feet in the sand on what it is that they've built. They've got a couple guys playing well in the minor leagues. You need to give those guys an opportunity. I know you spent $25 million on Josh Donaldson. You spent $25 million last year. It's $50 million, a lot of money. I know it's hard to eat that money, but I promise you guys, it doesn't make it any better watching someone play poorly on your dime. Just allow a young player to perform and do what he's paid to do. He's not paid a lot of money. It's essentially like having a guy go out there and play for free on those contracts. The Yankees have to either decide if they're going to play their young guys or they're really going to allow Josh Donaldson to send this ship straight into the Pacific Ocean, down to the bottom of the ocean, because you cannot allow DJ LeMahieu to be struggling on that. I believe it's his foot or his ankle, whatever it is. He's having a problem. He's hitting 220. This is a guy essentially who's been a career 300 hitter with the New York Yankees, pretty much the most reliable guy on the team. And now you have a black hole at third base, and now your most reliable player of the last 4 years is an automatic out. And then IKF's playing the wrong position. So when you combine all those things and you don't have a left fielder, you are not winning games. That's what fourth place is. And that's why, of course, we want Ohtani. It's why we want guys called up from AAA. There's a few moves that they can make, but it seems like there's 3 or 4 things they could be doing and 4 of them that they're doing wrong. So they've got to get active quick, and not all of it's making a splash trade. Some of it is just a matter of a decision, calling someone up.
Yeah. I think we'll wrap up this area of the segment and talk a little bit about, the NBA here in a sec. But moment of truth. Did the Yankees get Ohtani?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I actually don't believe Ohtani will be traded at all. And I think if anybody trades for Ohtani, it'll be a smaller package that people aren't anticipating, like you're saying. And it'll be one of the teams like maybe Baltimore, or maybe just a team who wants his services for the postseason run and essentially know they're going to lose him. I think the package is going to surprise some people. So, yeah, I'm going to say the Yankees won't, but I do believe they'll try somewhat.
I'm going to say they do.
Okay.
I think they get him. I do.
I love that.
And the reason I say that is just because I think, desperation makes you dangerous. And I think Brian Cashman is going to be desperate come trade deadline. And I think he's going to have, his guys trying to get some intel. They're going to be hearing about the Dodgers. Like, you know what? We don't even want to chance this because the Dodgers are scared. If the Yankees get him, they know they're going to have a mess on their hands. They're kind of, kicking back, relaxing. They're a top team. Ohtani's going to be ours next year. That's pretty much like the standard belief. I think Dodgers fans even feel that way. When you talk to Dodgers fans, it's like, oh, yeah, Ohtani's coming to LA and he's going to be ours and, screw the Angels and all that. But what if he's not? What if he's going to the Yankees? Like, what if he wanted to go to the Yankees previously, but early on in his career, that West Coast closer to home thing jived more? Now that he's 29 years old, I don't think that's the deal breaker that everyone acts like it is. Now, I understand the time zone. Yankees games will be on at 2 a.m. I've heard all of that. I still don't think it's as important to him at 29 as it was when he was coming into the big leagues. And so,
right.
I think that's the interesting thing there. But just like the recent thing he said, he just wants to be on a team that doesn't suck. I mean, dude, he comes to the Yankees and it's him and Judge. It's him and, Garrett Cole and Rodon. And, I mean, like, that's crazy when you think about it. And so I just feel like the Yankees are just going to get it done because last year they have nothing to show for their deadline. If you look, they went aggressive, but it's not one of those things where I think they went too aggressive and they're going to learn from that mistake and they're going to be, no, I think they're going to go and instead learn from the mistake of, well, we could have gone out and we could have gotten, I'm totally blanking on the guy's name that went to Cincinnati or what came from Cincinnati.
Luis Castillo.
Yeah. So
yeah, they went half baked, no question.
That's the thing. So they went aggressive, but Andrew Benintendi, who would be great in left field right now, is not there. They did not bring him back. So he didn't do anything after that. And he also got hurt the hamate bone, which cost him the whole season. Then you have Frankie Montas, who got hurt, who's not going to play probably the rest of the season and is probably not ever going to play in pinstripes again. Another bust. They got rid of Montgomery, who they could very well use right now. And, I mean, Bader's the only one you could argue, but if they don't bring Bader back, I don't think that was a great move. You know what I mean? It's like Bader's the only one because even Efros, he's not going to pitch for another 2 years. No,
that was a waste.
I mean, like they gave away Wisniewski for a freaking relief pitcher.
Right.
I mean, Wisniewski is a solid starter. I'd say he's a fourth starter in a rotation. You know, I mean, the Montas trade sucked. I mean, let's be honest, though. Those guys haven't really done anything, but I think Ken Waldichuk, if he was in the Yankees organization, I think would be better than Ken Waldichuk in Oakland, personally. But,
Yeah.
like you said, half-baked. And that is why I believe they're going to, instead of looking at Soto going to the Padres last year, looking at Castillo going to Seattle, they're going to be like, you know what? No. We're going to go back to just Yankees baseball. We're going to be the Yankees. And so I think they make the move. I think they get Ohtani. You know, maybe they get Drury with him, and that's kind of how they figure out that infield thing. But I think maybe Torres is on the way out. They already mentioned him last year in the Pablo Lopez conversation, who was also a guy they tried to get. So I think Torres, and then maybe somebody like, I don't know. I think you could see like a Sanchez.
Maybe a Luis Castillo heads out.
Well,
or not Luis Castillo. Luis Severino.
Yeah, no, I know what you meant. I was thinking Severino. Yeah. I was thinking about. I'm totally blanking on his name. That guy that comes up and starts every now and then. Totally blanking on his name. He pitched pretty well in his first game with the Yankees, and then like he's all right.
I feel like there's been a few of those guys this year.
Well, okay, so yeah, just insert one of those guys in there.
But yeah.
You know, and then I think the package
kind of like the Abreu last year, where he just came up, started like 6 games, showed obviously some quality stuff. Yeah, like maybe we'll throw in a guy who is big league ready.
Yeah, they're not afraid to throw those guys in because last year, Sears. See, I mean, that's Sears in a nutshell. So,
yeah.
You know, I look at and I have their list right here for me. Randy Vasquez is who I was thinking of.
Randy Vasquez.
Because he's the 12th guy in their farm system. Roderick Arias, if they really like him, that report came out pretty recently. So this is around the time you have those pro scouts going around and you're like, they're going to those games and such, and they're just keeping an eye on those guys. So maybe you put together, because they have Brando Maeda, who they like long term. Okay. He's in rookie ball, so they like him like a lot long term. They have Richard Fitz, 8th overall, who is a right-handed pitcher, AA, ETA of 2024. He's 23 years old. Drew Thorpe, who is a draft pick. He's the younger one of the guys, but he's in high A. He has a 2025 ETA. You have Will Warren, who is in AAA right now. That feels like kind of like hate to bring it up, the Joey Gallo trade. That feels like Otto. You know what I mean? Glenn Otto. Mm-hmm. That feels like a Glenn Otto trade where it's like you put him in there, that kind of sweetens the pot a little bit. He's more, I would say they have ETA 2023. So, I mean, this guy could be in the big leagues right now. And on a bad Angels team, maybe they start getting him going and he pitches in the major leagues. So, let's just put this package together. Glaber, Severino. Which one are you going with, Peraza or Dominguez?
I'm going with Dominguez. I think that's what they want.
Yeah.
Because I think with Joe Adell's playing well in AAA. He's played well in AAA. I think he got called up recently.
Yeah.
But Adell in general has not been what they wanted, which was to be essentially a perennial all-star, a guy that they can see. I mean, the guy they can see in the All-Star game, someone that they can put at the top of the lineup and essentially provide depth with the Rendons and the Trouts and the Ohtanis. He hasn't been that. He's essentially been a 6 and 7 hitter when he gets up to the big leagues and struggling at that. So if I'm the Angels, I'm looking at it and saying, if we can go get an outfielder, a guy who people are comparing to Mickey Mantle, is he going to be Mickey Mantle? No, never in a million years. He'll only be Mickey Mantle on MLB The Show. But Jason Dominguez, in my estimation, will be a really good big leaguer for a long time, and he's incredibly young. The Angels need that. And if they want to win a World Series, or now let's not even talk about a World Series, make it to the playoffs, you need more organizational depth. And Jason Dominguez is a fantastic start. He's not going to be the only guy in the package. There's going to be like 6 or 7 guys. But Jason Dominguez being a part of that is really good.
No, I agree with you. I think Dominguez, who is their number 1 prospect now. So you have Dominguez, Warren, and we'll throw Arias in there. So we're giving you a middle infielder, 18 years old, Love him in rookie ball. Everyone's talking about him. Switch hitter. Then we're giving you Jason Dominguez, our number 1 prospect, 20 years old. You know, he's going to be ready next year. That's the consensus. And Will Warren, who could pitch for you right away. And we'll throw in a sweetener here, and we'll give you Matt Sauer, 20th right-handed pitcher. So yeah, Matt Sauer, Roderick Arias, Will Warren, and Jason Dominguez. So you hold on to Austin Wells, Spencer Jones, Peraza, Pereira, Trey Sweeney, Thorpe, and you get rid of Arias, Warren, Sauer, Severino, and Torres. Now, I understand that's a lot, but we're talking about a guy that's 2 people, and I don't think it's enough, honestly, for what you're getting in him. So I would honestly think that'd be a steal, but I think it's realistic considering the fact no control, expiring contract, and if you don't, you don't bring him back, you only got him for half a season.
Yeah, I would say that Sevy is going to be considered a net loss when it comes to a trade. Obviously, he's making $10 million. His ERA is 7.
Yeah.
His fastball is not what it was. He's sitting at like 94 when I've been watching. 94 is not Luis Severino. That is not who we're accustomed to. We're used to seeing 97, 98. His fastball essentially tells you what type of pitcher you're going to get that day. And to me, like I said, I feel like he's just a straight up net loss in the trade. And I don't think the Angels are going to do that. I would flip-flop Severino with Clark Schmidt. I think Clark Schmidt's a guy who's ready to pitch in the big leagues. Obviously, he's actually pitched very well this year. And I think he would be somebody that the Angels could plug in and still continue to win games so that there's no rebuild in place, which of course they're going to be selling the organization most likely in the next year or two. I can't imagine you're just going to give up your ace and then not have a pro-ready guy to plug into the rotation. Severino, I don't see as a guy ready to plug into anybody's rotation, let alone the Yankees. Yeah. So, and the Angels, I can't see wanting him. So, yeah, I can see Clark Schmidt being a part of that package, maybe sweetening it a little bit. So, yeah, I'd go with that.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think Clark Schmidt, that's actually kind of funny. We're in a world now where Severino doesn't really have value and Clark Schmidt does. Yeah, I mean, I think that would make sense. And, I mean, I'll be honest, the Yankees would be kind of dead to rights if they asked for Peraza in addition to Jason Dominguez. You might have to say yes anyway if you're that close to the, the finish line. But
yeah,
I can't trade you Torres, trade you Peraza, and not have anything there. I can't have DJ LeMahieu as the only option at second. You know what I mean? Right. So that's the one, I think, tricky part of that. And then, I don't know, I think I could see them asking for more, and I could see them kind of settling because I think it's going to kick in pretty quickly. I mean, you're sitting here one game below 500. That's not good. Like, at this point in the season, they got off to a decent start. Like, they did start winning games, and then they fell off. There were some injuries and whatnot. But this is what the Angels are. I mean, it seems like every year they start off with some sort of jolt, and then everyone's like, oh, see, the Dodgers might not be the best team in L.A., and then the season goes on, and they're at the bottom, and they're catching up with the Astros, and now Seattle's good, and Texas is really good. Simeon's hitting. So that's a problem. I thought it was funny in our comments, Opus, my friend Fish, every MLB 23 The Show franchise I have played lately, Ohtani goes to Texas in the offseason. Could you ever see that?
No.
I could not.
No, I just can't. No, I can't see that happening. Because, I mean, obviously they've spent big, but now they have an asset that essentially does nothing for them. Jacob deGrom is making $40+ million a year. He's not doing anything for them. And when you saw with the Angels and Rendon is getting paid. A lot of people don't realize this. He's getting paid more than Mike Trout this year.
Oh, yeah.
He's getting paid more than Mike Trout next year and the year after that. And that's part of the reason why, because people always say, why don't the Angels get aggressive? Or why wouldn't Texas now get aggressive? Why would that happen? Well, when you're spending $40 million on one asset and that asset is not available and you spend it on a marginal talent in Anthony Rendon. Rendon obviously was a key cog in Washington's offense to go win a World Series, but by no means was Anthony Rendon a top 5 or 10 player in the game. He was somebody who he had a hot postseason, just spectacular. But if you're out there spending $250 million on Anthony Rendon, it essentially disqualifies you from reinvesting in future assets. And now that Jacob deGrom is gone with Tommy John, we don't know how he may never pitch again. We don't know how he's going to recover from that. So can I see them going and taking a risk on Ohtani? No. I think it's cool that he always ends up in Texas in that MLB The Show league. But yeah, I don't think any team that's wasted a lot of assets on their organization is going to turn around and take another risk with, I mean, a guy who essentially is making Ohtani, you can argue, is going to make $60 million a year.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
It is a lot of money. It's a big investment. I mean, I don't think you have a choice at this point. But it's interesting, right? Because it's like you get rewarded because you don't have the salary cap, but at the same time, you don't have the salary cap. And then you get stuck in these long deals. So it's like, I mean, we even saw with Stanton. I mean, I was talking about this the other day. I don't think Stanton has actually lived up to anything the Yankees thought they were getting. I don't. I think he's had some moments, and I think what gets him by is that he hits home runs. He can hit a bunch of home runs when he's healthy, and his postseason success. Like when the postseason comes
for you.
What's that?
I got something big for you. I think Stanton actually lived up to expectation.
Really?
Let me tell you why. Yeah, I'm going to blow you away with this. Like, people may not agree with this at all, but I totally understand what you're saying. In terms of his talent, in terms of his inability to stay healthy, I think it's been unacceptable. But what I can say about Stan is that he's had multiple moments in the postseason where you could say he easily, if the team was a little bit better, he would have been our MVP of a postseason run. Maybe twice he would have done it already. Now, here's the amazing thing. CC Sabathia, who today is now retired, occasionally I'll see him out at a steak dinner, right? Or at some private event. He's considered a Yankees success. He had one successful postseason run with the New York Yankees. One time ever. Think about that. So I understand exactly what you're saying, but when CC Sabathia is considered a success, which, by the way, I agree, he was completely successful. You just got to strike once. You got to win one time. If we win one World Series, Garrett Cole's contract is now worth it. If we win once in Garrett Cole's contract, it's worth it.
Yeah.
We'll consider him a success. But if Giancarlo Stanton, if that organization, if we went out and got a left-handed bat, maybe we went out and got a Freddie Freeman, and we put the proper talent around Giancarlo Stanton, he's been unacceptable in terms of availability. But if his monster postseasons were rewarded at the end with a championship because the assets around him were good enough, we would remember him as a success story too. So I agree that he probably hasn't been on the field and been impactful the way we thought he would be. But when push came to shove, when it mattered, Giancarlo Stanton showed up and our team was not ready to win. Whether you want to blame cheating from Houston, I don't blame cheating in Houston. I don't do it anymore. I feel like the New York Yankees did Giancarlo a huge disservice because he did what he was supposed to do to get that 1 or 2 ring. Those 1 or 2 championships should have been there for Giancarlo, and it would have changed the complexion of how we see him. And now that I look at it, I'm like, how many contracts are there in the history of a sport 7 years down the road or 4 or 5 years down the road where they finally strike gold? Usually those championships, that little risk that you took on an asset, they strike in the first 3 seasons of that contract. And I feel like Giancarlo did that.
That's interesting. I definitely don't disagree with what you're saying. What I find fascinating is the idea, like, if the Yankees are in a different era when they're winning a lot of championships, then what you're just saying is that Garrett Cole wouldn't be worth 1 World Series. He'd need to have more. But right now, we've lowered the expectations to 1 World Series makes the contract. And so that is why, going back to the whole Ohtani thing, like the changing of the guard, like we're seeing Baltimore. We're seeing like the Rays. I mean, these teams aren't going away. So you can't just be the big bad Yankees anymore. Like you're going to have to, you know, like you can, but you can't just be that just by existing.
Right.
Merely existing doesn't work anymore. In the 27 World Championships, no one gives a shit. Like no one cares.
Nobody. Not even us. I don't care.
When I hear that, I'm like, it's so painful because if you weren't alive for, it's the same thing with like I know there's going to be Rams fans in here, so they would agree. Same thing with like when 49ers fans talk about how many championships they had. And I'm like, all right, you guys haven't won a title since in my lifetime. So what you're talking about, and you're younger than me, means you've never actually seen any of those championships. I mean, thank God, like I've seen Yankee championships. I've been alive for them. But I mean, it sounds ridiculous to claim Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Like, bro, I've only seen them in black and white, like, you know, redistributed film. You know, I don't,
Right.
I've never seen a true game of those guys, you know? I mean, that's ridiculous. So, I don't know. That whole thing, yeah. But our guy Dan is actually in here. Dan421. It's the two goats, Jake and Gary. Our guy Alex Les has F them picks, and Cashman can F them prospects. My cousin Gabe, how's it going, man? Jack42 says hola amigos. What's up, Jack? All right, so we talked almost the entire time about Ohtani. So, you know what? We're not going to be live much longer because, I mean, this has been a lot of fun, but, you know, I know you got stuff to do, and I will be going live on Kick. You'll be back tomorrow, you said, right?
Perhaps tonight. I'll see how it goes.
Okay.
We'll see.
All right.
Yeah.
So let's wrap it up here with some NBA talk.
Okay.
All right. I want to get your thoughts. Actually, I already know your thoughts, but I wanted to get out there about the whole GOAT conversation that we were talking about yesterday, because I thought you had some great stuff to say. And obviously, that stuff is on Kick. People can go and rewatch that. But I think it's better if it's in, like, this video, so to speak.
Totally agree.
So give it to me straight. What are your thoughts, exactly what you said about LeBron and Michael Jordan? Because everyone already knows that I think LeBron's the GOAT, and they know why I think that. So here's the floor for you.
You know, honestly, I feel like LeBron, he's just not in the right era. And what I would say by that is that we're now currently, I mean, there's shows like ours, right? Where obviously we have it open for debate. We can agree and disagree all we want, and people are comfortable agreeing and disagreeing. That's just this era of what you see. You see the same thing in music with Drake. Everyone would see the name Drake and they'd say he's essentially been the most popular artist in any field, not just hip hop, right? So you're sitting there looking at him, but there are a lot of people who do not like Drake. They do not like his music, right? That is, and you are a perfect example, and I totally understand why someone would feel that way. I personally like Drake. Is he my favorite? No, but he sells more albums than the Beatles, right? Is according to him. So, and that's true. Those are true numbers. But I say all that to say this. When Michael Jordan came up and he essentially took the world by storm in 1991 with the Chicago Bulls, you're looking at Michael. There was absolutely no one criticizing him. The first time Michael Jordan was criticized, a book was written called The Jordan Rules. And it was so groundbreaking for Michael to be criticized that Michael actually addressed the book. He actually took time out of his day to address this, okay? I had Michael Jordan bed sheets. I had Michael Jordan bed sheets, wallpaper. I had a bed of Michael Jordan's face on it, okay? That's not the way the world works today. The reason that today's athletes, today's musicians, today's anything are not considered as good as they were in the 70s, 80s, or 90s, and in particular the 90s, is because people were taught to treat things like it's the best. That's just what it was. In 1995, when Michael Jordan was winning, he was winning the NBA championship, he was the MVP, Finals MVP, everyone thought Michael was the best. everyone loved Michael Jordan except for his competitors, which, by the way, people were literally calling Michael Jordan Jesus Christ on the floor. Larry Bird called Michael Jordan Jesus Christ. That is God on the basketball floor. Could you imagine another player? Could you imagine if Paul George came out and said, yeah, you know what? We thought we had him. We got to game 7 when I was in Indiana, but it just turned out Christ was out there. Jesus Christ showed up to the floor and we just had no chance, right? Everyone today would look at that and say, he's yielding. He's completely yielding all control to another asset. He's essentially saying this other guy is so much better than us that there's nothing we can do in a couple of years when he actually gets talent around him. So I say all that to say this. LeBron James is in an era where we get very comfortable criticizing. We criticize LeBron all the time. Not just LeBron. We criticize Kevin Durant. We criticize Kobe Bryant. We criticize everybody. Of course, Kobe less so because he came up a little before LeBron James. So it's like the later you play, you're going to be criticized more. And you see it already today with Wemby. Wemby came up and played one summer league game, and every single soul was saying, I can't wait. I'm sure they're going to shut him down. He's no business on the NBA floor. I think Scoot Henderson's going to be a better prospect. Everyone couldn't wait to talk about it. That's the same phenomenon that LeBron James dealt with. He had expectation. Michael Jordan had no expectation. Michael Jordan came out and everyone said, he's a great prospect. He's coming out from a great coach, a Hall of Fame college coach, and he's coming out and we believe he can be a great player someday. And you even saw it for those who saw Air. Great film for anyone who hasn't seen it. And it's a biopic about Michael Jordan signing with Nike. Really good film. So that came out and he literally said, oh, yeah, they're going to give me a percentage of each shoe and all this stuff. And it was groundbreaking stuff. All the while, 35 years later, Michael Jordan could come out today and someone signs a shoe deal out of high school or college and he says, they're giving all these kids money right out with guarantees, criticizing players, right? Openly criticizing players. So my verdict is this. LeBron James is considered the second greatest player of all time by most people, not all people, by most people, only because he came out in 2003 and not 1991. If the roles were reversed, we would be criticizing Michael Jordan for his inability to be a good teammate by punching Steve Kerr, for his inability to keep a coach when Doug Collins was fired. We would be criticizing Michael Jordan to the same degree that we criticize LeBron James, because we would be asking, is this the next LeBron James in Michael Jordan? So LeBron James is only the greatest player today. He's the greatest player of all time. And in 35 years, there will be another player who's better than LeBron James. We don't know who he is. Could be Wemby, could be Scoot Henderson. We'll see who that is. But that is my verdict.
I love it. I think you're absolutely spot on. You couldn't say it any better. And I've always said that it just feels like scoring is overvalued nowadays. I mean, we had the whole Damian Lillard conversation. I did have a stat to bring up with that, by the way. He was 7th last year in defensive efficiency rating. 7th is in lowest in the league, like bad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, no wonder why Portland didn't make the playoffs. He was 7th. Jeremy Grant was 10th. And Anthony Simons was 1st. So it was
we love Jeremy Grant. Both of us.
Yeah.
Do.
We like Jeremy Grant. I love Anthony Simons, but like, defense still matters. Like, even though, like, you know what I found is that, like, Mike Conley, for instance, when you just assume he's like a defensive point guard, like defensive minded point guard, he was in that list. He was near the bottom of the list. Not a good defender. Like,
really?
Yeah. Like, that's my thing, is that I feel like defense, because there's no there's no pro football focus for the NBA, and there should be, but there's none. Until there is, we're going to continue with the constant babbling. Anytime we like a player, we're going to say, well, he's a good defender, because there's no way for anybody to dispute that. No one is going to go through loads of clips and put every single little thing, and you can't because they're 82 games as opposed to 16 or 17 in an NFL season. And so, that's kind of my whole dig with Lillard is that, and it kind of goes to show you is why, Steph Curry scoring, right? Lillard, 32 points per game. Like, how dare you call him overrated? First off, overrated doesn't mean bad. Secondly, scoring isn't everything. And when, right. I don't know if you saw The Ringer, they had this trade idea. I think it was The Ringer. And it was like Toronto giving up boatloads of picks. Scotty, I forget his last name. The draft,
Scotty Barnes.
Yeah, which I would not trade him. He does everything. Yes. Scotty Barnes, Gary Trent, like a bunch of prospects and a bunch of picks for Damian Lillard and Nasir Little. And I'm like, I'm like, so wait a minute. Toronto wants to get older and they want to get worse. That's the goal here. And then this dude comments and he's like, well, yeah, dude, but they'd have Damian Lillard and Pascal Siakam, and they would have OG Anunoby, and I'm like, that's not a title team.
That team is terrible. That's not a good team.
Yeah. I feel like Lillard is considered that number one guy. Like going back to you were talking about LeBron. LeBron is still a one. He's still a one. He's still the top of AD is fantastic and would be a one on most teams. LeBron is a one on the Lakers. Damian Lillard is not a one. He's not.
Yeah, it does seem to exactly what you're saying about defense and how we're the eye test will tell you these things. You can tell when someone's a good defender. They always tell me, they've told me this lie since really 2009, 2010, that Steph Curry was not a terrible defender. He is a serviceable defender and they called him a team defender, right? And the reason they called him that was because he averaged a certain amount of steals. Steals are not defense.
No.
Okay? For anyone who's played NBA 2K, there's plenty of times where your career player, averages 2 steals a game, 3 steals a game, but you also average 10 blow-bys where your center has to come help you on defense. Yeah. And that's where defensive rating and all that stuff needs to become a bigger part in the game, and offensive efficiency, which I always try to talk about when Carmelo Anthony, I always had to explain to people that LeBron James is a better offensive player than Carmelo Anthony in 2013. But I couldn't get people to agree with it because of averages, point averages. And when you're talking about triple doubles and steals, those don't make guys great players. What makes them great players is the ability to impact the game and helping win. And obviously, it's the reason that Kevin Durant left the Oklahoma City Thunder. Russell Westbrook was averaging every number under the sun. It didn't matter what number it was, he was going to get it. Steals, blocks, he was assists, he was scoring. He ended up with a scoring title. He was doing everything. And yet Kevin Durant left because he realized all these numbers actually don't mean anything. You can essentially just manipulate the numbers. So, yeah, I agree completely. The NBA needs some type of, I know we have PER and there's a couple of other ones. They're trying to get it in there, but it's not enough right now in the NBA. There needs to be an easier way to identify when a guy is a great player on the defensive end versus just an offensive asset, or if he's just an inefficient, high volume offensive asset.
Yeah. And I mean, hear me out when I say it. PFF is not the Bible. It is subjective. It's made by human beings. So it can be wrong. But at the same time, it gives you an idea of something that we didn't have before. I mean, we let's be honest there. We didn't have that. I talked to Charles Davis, who's with CBS. He's with NFL Network, and he does the announcing on Madden. And he said, we need to be on our A game because now you have PFF out there, and it's the everyday fan knows just as much as you do in the booth now. If you're not, up to speed, it's you're getting added on Twitter and whatnot. And he was right. It was so spot on because that's really what's happened. But, with the NBA, it's man, And the reason I brought it wasn't just to bag on Lillard, because I've been on my like anti-Lillard brigade. I think people think I hate the guy
sure
personally.
have. You're his biggest enemy.
But well, I'm tired of seeing him. He's all over my feed. It's an echo chamber of Lillard, and I'm tired of hearing how like the Miami Heat are automatically going to win it now because of Damian Lillard. But what I will say is the reason I brought him up was to the point with Michael Jordan. I think NBA fans value scoring more than anything. And like, I understand it's kind of weird because in like, football, for instance, people get obsessed over yardage. Like, oh, he ran for 1,000 yards. That means he's a top running back. Not always the case. Yards per carry will tell you, and yards after contact, yards before contact, like things like that. Right. Yep. Baseball. Everyone gets obsessed over home runs. I personally get obsessed over stolen bases. Like the idea, like Acuna has 41. Everyone should be talking about that. Like, it's not Ricky Henderson's pace because that guy was literally he was a cheat code. Lou Brock, cheat code. But this is like the best performance we've seen on the base pass since Lou Brock, which is insane if you think about it. And he has
pop. Like, the fact that Acuna can do this and lead the yard at any point. I can tell you right now, I went to Chase Field and I was watching D-backs Braves. Two of the best teams in the National League. Acuna went 490 over my head in left center field.
Oh my God.
490. I don't think people heard me on the chat. 490-foot home run from a dude who might steal 70 bases. Are you kidding me?
Oh man.
That's it. That's how good Acuna, in my opinion, is the best offensive asset in the world. It's just because it's really just because Ohtani can pitch is the only reason that he's not considered the best player.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable what he's doing.
No, absolutely. Acuna, and then we talked about that, and not to get totally off topic, but the point that I was making, and then we'll get into that, because Acuna has the most ridiculous contract I've ever seen. 8 years, $100 million. His agent needs to be fed to the wolves, because that's awful for him. I mean, it's
tarred and feathered.
It's literally the greatest contract I think any team has ever signed. To get Acuna at that level, playing at that level on that deal, he's got to hold out eventually at some point. There's got to be some sort of reworking of his deal. I don't know how you make something like that happen, but it needs to be done. But anyway, my point is the scoring in the NBA is the only thing people care about. Like, the assists don't matter. I mean, Jokic, I think, kind of, because like Russell Westbrook was always demonized for, filling the stat sheet. Mm-hmm. Jokic, to a degree, is kind of bringing that back, but like people are actually giving him props, which kind of annoys me because I'm a huge Russ fan. But what I will say is that there's nothing more prevalent than just straight scoring. And it's why you have like Devin Booker, not Devin Booker, what's his name? Dylan Brooks. Dylan Brooks is averaging 17 to 20 points a game last year. And you had some people before his blowout thing where he went all egotistical and he was a laughing stock. There were people like, yeah, Devin Booker's really good. Like, he's averaging almost 20 points per game. Like, the guy can shoot. And you look and you're like, but why does he shoot so much? And I hate to do this, but like, I love the Jayhawks, but like Kelly Oubre is a great example. The guy shoots way too much. He was averaging 22 a game, but he's shooting way too much to get there. To the point where
he's not a 22 a night guy. Yeah. Kelly Oubre was a Sun. So I was watching a ton of Kelly Oubre because he played the 3 in Phoenix.
Yeah.
And he is a 13 a night guy who can shoot the ball, right? But he essentially was playing like Josh Smith in Atlanta back in the day. Josh Smith had no business taking threes. Yeah, Josh Smith shouldn't have been taking as many shots as he was. He was still a really good player. But his mentality, yeah, I love Josh Smith. Defended him plenty of times. But the way that he played the game was not efficient to winning. He was getting numbers because he was still a talented guy. But like you said, Kelly Oubre is not a 22 a night guy. That's a 15 guy. Yeah. He's a guy who should be standing in the corner as the team's Harrison Barnes to those like Warriors juggernaut teams. He should have been like the Harrison Barnes who stands in the corner, hits a couple big threes, and then plays good defense on the other end. Kelly Oubre was a very good defender, at least from what I saw. So yeah, there are a lot of guys in the NBA, especially with all the money in the game, who don't want to play the game the right way because they can manipulate their own numbers. So why would I take 6 or 7 shots that are good shots when I can take 15 shots? When 8 of those shots were bad, I'll make 3 of them.
Yeah.
And now I can ask for a certain contract that otherwise I probably wouldn't have got. So I think the NBA is just in a little bit of a weird spot.
I mean, it's been this way, I think, since Jordan, though. I really do. I think it's all about scoring, man. And it's like,
Yeah.
like LeBron is demonized when he passes up the shot. I remember JJ Redick going off on a tangent on ESPN one day, and he's like, LeBron is LeBron James a clutch postseason player? And he's like, what kind of stupid question is that? And then he's like, actually, I have the information here. And he's like, basically what I'm looking at, he's got more than Kobe. He's got more than Jordan. He's actually the most clutch player in playoff history. And he's like, the freaking narratives this guy gets. And I'm like, I agree. And, you have people in the comments section like defending Jordan because, and that's another thing I laugh at, is that there are people that never even like ever saw him play. There are people that are now like 13, 14 years old. They're kids that are growing up and they're defending Jordan. And I'm like, oh, come on. Like
It's absurd.
This is ridiculous. I mean, let's be honest here. It's what Alex was saying. I remember you and I forget what we were playing, maybe Rocket League. And Alex brings up, do you think it has something to do with all the memorabilia out there? All the fact that these people collect Jordans, the Jordan brand has become huge, and they just don't want to admit that they have the lesser player. And it's like, and I don't think it's necessarily that to a degree, but I do see what he's saying. And I know this has gone on for a while, but it's just like, when you watch LeBron, he was made in a lab. He's a modern day Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson, it does not get enough credit because, again, it is a league. Maybe back in the day he got the credit, but as soon as Michael came in, it was like points, scoring, shooting, taking the last shot. Didn't
all
matter
the sexy
that
stuff.
Yeah, it didn't matter that Magic Johnson played all 5 positions. He played center. He's the greatest point guard of all time, although people think Curry is, which is ridiculous. But he's the greatest point guard of all time, and he played center in the postseason. Okay? Who else was doing stuff like that?
Nobody.
And that's the thing, is like, that's the bummer about the whole scoring barrage, is that, Damian Lillard, everyone talks about how this and that. Yeah, it's great. He averaged 32. They didn't even make the play-in. I mean, we're talking 10 spots, and they didn't even make the play-in.
That's funny you say that, though. Really think about this, and I actually have a take that I want to bring up to you, and maybe I'm wrong. Let me ask you this. When people win the scoring title, usually, right? Like Michael Jordan, you saw it with LeBron at one point. LeBron won a scoring title.
Yeah.
Okay. Kobe Bryant. Okay. Kobe Bryant won the scoring title on actually one of the worst Lakers teams that they had in 30 years. Okay. So in my opinion, when people bash LeBron James and say, well, he wasn't able to accumulate as many scoring titles, he's not as good of a scorer, he wasn't able to get as many assist titles, he's not as good of a passer, right? Doesn't that really say, though, that if you have scoring titles, you essentially had the green light to just score whenever you wanted?
Absolutely.
Because last I checked, whoever wins the scoring title, rarely ever do I see them win the championship. I didn't see Michael Jordan do it. It just wasn't happening.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm watching Damian Lillard score 33 points a game or whatever it was. And I'm sitting there looking at it, and everyone's like, or James Harden scoring 36 points a game. And someone says, oh, he's gonna run away with the scoring title. Okay, great. Do those extra 6 to 7 points that he has over the second place guy, is he really that much better of a scorer? Or is he just like going to the line and he's taking 8 more shots than that guy?
And he's shooting 43% from the field. Like, that's Russell Westbrook right there for his career. And he's considered Westbrook.
He is. Yeah, and Russell Westbrook obviously is a better player than what people give him credit for, but it just seems like watching the NBA, and I understand, because when you're talking to the everyday fan, it's going to be very simplified. They just want to look at points And they just figure like when LeBron James and Dwayne Wade played together, okay, they both averaged 30. So now they're going to average 60 on the same team. That was the mentality, right? But once you see LeBron James get to the team, now Dwayne Wade's a 22 a night guy, an efficient 22 a night guy. And that's what we're talking about when it comes to scoring. LeBron James could score 40 a night, just like you project Michael Jordan. Oh, he'd average 60 in today's NBA. LeBron James can go average 40.
I love when people say that.
But the problem is, Michael Jordan would just fall out of bed and average 50.
I know.
Right?
He could average 20 in his 40s today. Like, all right.
Yeah. Oh, I'm not kidding you. Somebody, I can't remember who it was at ESPN. They said that Michael Jordan would have a chance against LeBron James. This is 2 years ago in a one-on-one basketball game. And they're like, what do you mean? Like same age versus same age? They're like, no, I think Michael Jordan is so much more polished offensively that he could show up now. He still plays his Hornets. He shows up to Hornets practices and occasionally will school some like rookie. And they think that LeBron James is going to lose in a one-on-one battle. I go, no, I don't think you understand. Michael Jordan, 6'6", he was like 240. What was he? 230 pounds. He was a twig in comparison to LeBron. LeBron James is a power small forward.
Yeah. LeBron James is like
275 pounds.
He's bigger than most tight ends.
Yes.
That's horrifying.
And we do the same. Yeah, we do the same thing with LeBron James, projecting him into the NFL. They tried to make it fun and say, oh, maybe he'll go play tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. And everyone said, oh, he'll get killed out there. I go, by who?
Yeah.
By who? The guy that's his size? Because Bill Belichick literally said he probably wouldn't play tight end. He probably play defensive end. He's the size of a defensive end. He's 6'8", 270 pounds.
Yeah.
People forget that LeBron James, when they're talking about the physicality of the 1980s and 1990s, 100% more physical. I got it. But we're talking about a guy who is more physical than all those guys. He just is. Physically, he is. And whether people like that or not, I mean, I can't force people to accept that truth. It just is what it is.
Yeah, it's definitely the sports thing where, I mean, man, Michael Jordan has this aura around him, this force field where it's like you can't, as soon as you get into that, people take that shit personally. It's like,
yeah.
Did you just say somebody other than MJ is the GOAT? I'm like, yeah. And by the way, the GOAT doesn't reside in any other sport except for hockey. The GOAT is Wayne Gretzky. So we need to get that out of the way because Gretzky has more assists than the next guy has points. And he's leading in points. And this is kind of like LeBron. Honestly, very similar to LeBron, except for the fact he's way more dominant, which is saying a lot. Gretzky leads all time in goals scored. LeBron leads all time in points. Neither are considered shooters, scorers. They're playmakers. They're guys that get guys involved. They're guys that fill the stat sheet. They do everything. Gretzky was known as, the guy that could set you up for the shot. But yet he's so far ahead of everyone else in points. Yeah. It's like, that, and that's the thing. It's not necessarily a knock on Jordan, but just this idea like the GOAT. Like you have to understand what you're saying. You're saying the greatest of all time. If we're talking GOAT in the NBA, and that's what I brought up, the GOAT conversation in the NBA. Okay, now we're talking, depending on who you are, you might bring up Kobe. I don't really see how he's in that argument, and I love him. I think it's between LeBron, Magic Johnson, Kareem, Michael Jordan. I think Wilt Chamberlain has an argument. I think Bill Russell has an argument to a degree. Those are the only guys that I would even, and I'm not saying all those guys I would say, but I'm saying I've heard all those and I've heard decent arguments. Larry Bird as well. And then I think it gets a little watered down after that. But the point is, that's the NBA greatest of all time. When you say the greatest of all time, it's just Gretzky, man. You may not follow hockey, but go and do yourself a favor and look up Gretzky's stats because they are insanity. It doesn't even make sense.
You don't think McDavid has a shot?
I think McDavid does have a shot, but it's going to be hard. He does?
Okay.
He is phenomenal. I mean, you've watched McDavid.
Awesome. I have, yes.
Let me just put it this way. You're watching hockey, and you're like, wow, these guys move really fast on skates. And then you see McDavid, you're like, holy shit, that dude has rockets on his skates because that guy is just faster than everyone else. He's so quick, like he can like shimmy and whatnot. Like, no, I mean, he is the closest. And people will say over and over again, Sidney Crosby, and whatever. But I think McDavid is better than Crosby ever was. I don't care who likes what I just said. I do believe that. And you don't have to worry about the complaining and everything. I got nothing against the Penguins, but man, that guy is always running his mouth. But no, I think McDavid has a shot. I'm not saying he'll get there. It's kind of like the same thing, a little bit the same thing, like how Odell Beckham Jr. got off that wicked good start at a young age, and he was theoretically on pace for Jerry Rice numbers. He won't get there, obviously. Maybe Justin Jefferson will. So it's kind of like in that vein where I think, and people disagree with me, but I don't think the GOAT is a quarterback in the NFL. I think the GOAT is Jerry Rice. He's so much more dominant and so much better than everyone else statistically. And I think that's how we should be looking at it. And if your argument is, well, okay, they have the stats, but they don't have the championships. Well, fine. But every one of those guys that's leading by a mile in stats have championships. Gretzky, Jerry Rice, LeBron James. Also bring up your point that you had when we were on Kick. Since when is 4 rings like a bad thing? Like, well, it's just 4 rings. Like,
no, I will say though, championships are the most overrated. It's the most overrated way to compare an asset, a singular asset. It's the worst thing you could ever do. And honestly, I don't mind if somebody doesn't win in basketball or whatever sport. To be honest with you, I think the greatest of all time in basketball can come from somebody who never wins. And I'll actually say that. And the reason I say that, there's way too many variables when it comes to winning a championship. There is, who's your GM? What city are you playing in? How attractive is that city to opposing free agents? Hey, what pick were you drafted in? Were you a late round pick? Obviously much easier to make it in the NBA because you're drafted to a team that's winning already, right? There is a ton of different things that can happen in the NBA. Devin Booker, there's potential that Devin Booker, while I do think Kevin Durant and all this thing will pan out, there's a chance that Devin Booker could end up with 0 championships when he retires, despite all the talent he's playing around, right?
Yeah.
So am I supposed to think that Devin Booker is now suddenly not one of the greatest shooting guards of all time? No. So to me, it's just, it doesn't make sense to look at somebody and say, oh yeah, Michael Jordan's a better player because he was 6-0. Okay, well, who was he playing? Who was the second best player Michael Jordan ever played in the finals? The second best shooter, like actual shooting guard that he had to guard. And it was Clyde Drexler.
I brought that up. You're like who was it? I was like, Clyde Drexler. Like,
Clyde Drexler? Do you know, ladies and gentlemen, do you know what Kobe Bryant would have done to Clyde Drexler?
We can't even say it. Do you know
what LeBron James? Yeah. Do you know what LeBron James would have done to Clyde Drexler? Clyde Drexler's not as good of a player as Kevin Durant. Clyde Drexler's not as good of a player as Kobe Bryant. He's not as good as T-Mac. If Tracy McGrady was the best player that Michael played, I would give him more of a nod. And don't get me wrong, I think Michael is far and away the second best player who ever played. I don't think it's close. I think it is Michael and LeBron. What you can flip-flop them all you want, but they are miles better than the next best player. And I just cannot understand how people can look at LeBron and say, oh yeah, he won 4 times. And then we'll just put him ahead of the guys with 3. And then we'll put him behind the guys who won 6. We don't put Michael behind guys who won 11. We don't put him behind Robert Horry.
I know.
So suddenly, like, I don't understand how we can possibly obsess over championships and then make that the determining factor. Just watch the game. If you watch the game and you say, oh, that guy that he's playing is unbelievable, but he's just more unbelievable. He's better, right? That should be enough to say that this guy is better. You don't have to look at it and say, okay, if Damian Lillard got traded to the Lakers this year for Anthony Davis and then somehow he won a title with the Lakers, now he's that much better because he won a championship. Just watch the game. Like, guys don't have to move teams. And the reason LeBron James, by the way, left the Cleveland Cavaliers at all was because we were obsessing over championships. It means nothing. I want them to strive to win a championship. I want the ultimate goal to be a championship. But it's not an indictment on a player if he's not on the team that can win a championship, or he's not the winner. Like, because to me now, it's almost like if you're not part of the winning team, they'll say you built a super team if you win. And then if you don't win, they ask you, why don't you go join this team? I'm like, what is wrong with this fan base? What is wrong with NBA Twitter?
Oh,
I guess it's Twitter altogether.
Oh Lord, yeah. Let's not go down that rabbit hole. I just put your kick link in the comments section. So that
Appreciate
should be
that.
man. So everyone go follow. Gary's at 88 followers on Kick, and we're pretty much a team here. I know we're interested in potentially joining one down the road. But you and I are a team right now. We're streaming every night, and I mean, it's like our own little podcast. I mean, you're like my third co-host. So
yeah, it's very fun. And our chats are fantastic. Both of our chats are amazing because we have super loyal followers, and we'll find a way to make sure that as this grows, because we know it's going to grow.
Yeah.
We're going to make sure that we put some type of emblem around the OGs so we don't miss them.
Hell yeah. That's how we got to do it. So, any final thoughts before we hop off? I mean, I'll have you on again because we have a lot that we could go on and on about. But I mean, this is us in a nutshell. Like I said, there's not anything we're gonna run out of like time to talk about. But yeah, anything you have to say?
No, I hope your prediction on Ohtani's right. That's the last thing I'll say. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I don't want to predict Ohtani to the Yankees because every time I make a prediction, other than Garrett Cole, somehow, some way, I did it with Bryce Harper, I did it with Manny Machado. I just can't get my hopes up. I want it desperately, but you just never know what can get done. I don't know if the Angels will even be willing. Maybe Artie Moreno has such an ego that he just won't trade him at all to anybody. You never know. So I'm just hoping for the best.
I only got one right last year. Well, I only predicted two guys, and I thought Castillo was coming, and he didn't. And then I got what's his face right, Benintendi. I thought the fit was perfect. So 1 for 2, right? That's not bad. It's batting 500 to plate appearances.
Better than the Angels.
Yeah. So yeah, that's gonna do it. Be sure to follow Gary Sheffield Jr., my guy. You can follow him on Kick. You can follow him on Twitter, and we'll be streaming every night over on Kick. I'm going to go over and stream on Kick now. If you're on Kick watching this, I'm not trying to confuse you. I will be going over there and maybe playing some Rocket League if anyone's up for that. It is going into Friday night. It is 10:34 here. So I know it's 7:34 for you. I'm jealous. But
yeah.
But no, I got plenty of time. You know, we'll do a late night stream. But Gary, appreciate you. We'll have you on again soon, and probably talk a little bit about the NFL next time. I think, I wanted to get to that, but, Ohtani is an important thing here. I'll clip up some of those, into, separate videos and whatnot. But thanks again, guys. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, and you can follow me at JK Bogan on Twitter and Kick and pretty much any social media. So until next time, guys, we'll see you later.